Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Moving into the Future. Today, I'm joined by Vincent Burruano. Vince is a seasoned sales professional with over 30 years experience in sales. He's authored 2 books, and today we're going to have a conversation about his history and story in sales, discuss some of his books, and have some fun. Vince, thanks for joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you coming on. You know, I read your book, Daily Dose of Sales Wisdom, last year and really enjoyed it. You know, I keep it by my desk. And, if there's ever a time where you just need a little boost, like you said, a daily dose, and it's helpful. And, some of it really, stuck with me, and I enjoyed some of your success stories in there. So before we get into the book, though, I'd like to hear your experience in sales. How did you get into sales? Was it something you always knew you were going to get into, or how did it happen for you?
No, that's a great question. And my father hates when I tell this story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. So I had gone to school and ended up with a degree in philosophy, thinking I would go to law school. And that was never to happen. So there I am, I graduate, I have a degree in philosophy, and every day I'd go to the store to buy the newspapers, because this is before the internet, and I'd lay them out on the kitchen table looking for jobs. And every day he'd come by and go, "Hey, is there anybody hiring any philosophers today?" And I'd laugh and then, go back and put my nose in the newspaper and try to find something. And the one thing that I kept coming across were jobs in sales. And seeing that I didn't have any other great skill set, I said, well, let me give this a try. So that's how I ended up in sales. I was not qualified to do much of anything else, but I did realize that my background in philosophy, learning how to talk and, kind of reason and argumentation and writing skills, they would all help me become successful in sales and sales management.
Yeah, and that does make sense too, because obviously sales is so human oriented, and philosophy in some senses, it depends on what type of philosophy you're really getting into, but a lot of it deals with the human experience, and how you react towards certain things, and how other people react. So it certainly makes sense. What else? You mentioned your history in philosophy, but what else, especially when you were young, that you saw that the natural skills you possessed that allowed you to do well early in sales? And what were some of your early challenges? Because it is challenging when you're young and new in sales to get going. So what were some of the things you saw you did well, and what were some of the things that you struggled with and felt you needed to improve on?
I'd like to thank many of my English teachers who gave me the love of writing, because I will tell you that I spent a lot of time in sales, writing proposals and things like that. And at a very early age, I had one of my stories for creative writing published when I was like 14 years old.
Oh, wow.
I had an English teacher who wouldn't let me give up on writing this piece. I tell this story in my book. Everybody else was getting a grade on their writing assignments except for me. He just kept having me rewrite these stories. And eventually I just gave in. And, back in the day, you had a longhand write this stuff. There was no computer. So I finally brought it to him, and he looked at it. He said, "Great." He said, "Your reward is I'm going to have it published in the local newspaper tomorrow." And so I got a taste of that, of learning to love to write. But also, I was involved with the student newspapers, which gave me a further love of writing, and then eventually in public speaking. So I've never been, shy to get up in front of a group and to talk and to do those things. And I think those were all skills that helped me be successful in sales. Whether it was working trade shows or cold calling, I guess I was, too dumb to know the difference. I just kept at it. And eventually, if you keep at it long enough, some good things happen, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I think that was Thomas Jefferson, right, who said that. And that was too with me when I was young in sales. Is like I was too naive to know when I was failing. Like I didn't even realize it was happening. I just kept going and looking for the wins, and I always had the mindset, eventually they would come. And my first experience in sales, it was cold calling, and I really enjoyed it. Just I enjoyed the technical aspect of like putting together a prospect list and like figuring out what I was doing well and what I wasn't doing well. Like when I did get a win, I used to analyze, why did I get this win? What did I say here that worked well? If I got a no, it was okay. What could I have done better and that sort of thing. And one of my first sales bosses taught me something really good. He's like, Jack, no is the second best answer to yes, because then you can move on. And that was really, that was really big for me. And another thing he did is he told me, he's like, you need to eliminate the fear of failure. He's like, and that was huge as a young person, to realize like everybody's going to fail. You're going to make mistakes, but, get past them, and especially in the moving industry too, get past them and do, just do better the next time or improve from your mistakes and learn from them and things like that. What other, qualities do you find that are important in sales, especially for a young person? Your second book, being the New Sales Professional Playbook. What are some of the things that, you advise a young person to do when they're just getting their start in sales?
I think you hit on it. You have to be a little bit fearless. And when I say that, I don't want to throw caution to the wind. I'm not saying not to be smart about how you work, but like I had a lot of experience cold calling, and I used to cold call in the Bronx. So in other places I've worked around the country, I had people going, oh, I don't know about cold calling. I said, you don't know cold calling until you're in the Bronx. I said, I went out and bought a Samsonite briefcase, one of those metal ones, and put brochures in it in case it was gunfire so I could get myself to a mailbox. At least I stood a chance of surviving. I said, you're cold calling in the middle of downtown Arlington or
Right,
something like
different.
that in a nice area. I said, give me a break. And I think part of it, it's use some humor because I love using humor to make a point, but I think that you have to go out and work hard, but work smart.
Mm-hmm.
And too many people in sales, and I don't want to point the finger at everybody, but oftentimes what happens is you get hired in sales and very few schools really teach you sales. So you
Right.
get out of school, very little experience in it, and you get hired by a company who puts you on the hip of one of their seasoned sales professionals and goes, why don't you go out with Susie or Bobby and watch them for the next month or two and see what they do. And there you can learn something from that. But just because you're really good at sales doesn't mean you're very good at teaching sales.
Right.
Or helping people understand the entire process. You get snippets without really understanding the beginning, middle, and end and how these things connect. And I think it's unfortunate. I'd love to see now that more colleges are introducing sales in addition to marketing, because those are two completely different things.
Right.
But in some ways, I think that everybody should have to take a sales class in high school. And the reason I think in high school, because you don't want to say college, that whole thing is changing. But I think everybody needs to learn how to sell themselves, their ideas, and not just, selling stuff door to door, but learning what it is to offer, be persuasive and promote your ideas and yourself. I think that's something everybody could benefit.
I do too. Because again, you said it. You said a couple things, and I want to circle back on one. But selling yourself, it's almost a what's the word I'm looking for? Almost like an experiment in confidence. And how can you put together a plan to sell yourself? And because you can find a lot of things out about yourself, and then once you put it all together, you can garner new confidence in yourself, in ways that you didn't know before. And I think that's very important because, salespeople come in all different shapes and sizes and personality types and whatnot. And some of the most successful are radically different from each other. But what they've done at some point in their life is find what works for them. And, and I think what you said is work harder, work smarter, not harder. That was one of the chapters in Daily Dose of Sales Wisdom that I liked the most. I think you talked about you working for an engineering firm, and the sales process that you went through in that took quite a long time, but it ended up being like, I think it was $125,000 deal or something in that realm. Um, that's my mentality too with what I do. I've gotten away from the transactional move business and chasing those, one-time office moves and looking more into account based business. That's the type of mentality I'm trying to take is, work smarter, work on these relationships. That was the next chapter actually is, the people remember how you make them feel. And, that's something I focus on a lot. And again, I've done that through self-reflection and knowing myself first. So yeah, I agree. And I think too, the great thing about sales, and again, you mentioned this in Daily Dose of Sales Wisdom too, is you control your salary, and you see so many layoffs right now at these, large tech companies. And I've been there, I gotten laid off from a tech company. And I think being back on the small business side, it teaches you can really make an impact. And, obviously these tech companies are great with their benefits and amenities and all of those things. But when you work for a small business, and, small business can be very large business, you make a real impact, and you dictate more of your salary and your worth and things like that. So, I hope people, as they go through these difficult times, at least are open to those opportunities, whether it be in sales or small businesses, and making their impact there too.
I think you're right. It was interesting. Several years ago, pre-COVID, I had the opportunity when I was still living near DC, working with a mentor program for young kids that were in foster care, to go and speak along with some other professionals about different jobs to high school juniors. And it was really interesting. So I'm there with a lawyer and somebody else in tech and all these other jobs. And then here I am, in sales, right? And so, but the one thing that seemed to resonate with them is I said, the one thing that I loved about sales is that every time I thought I was deserving of a raise, I just paid myself more. And so a lot of the kids started asking questions at the end and coming up to talk to me. And I said, well, I would just go out, I would sell something else. And because it was commission based, the more that I worked, the harder that I worked, smarter that I worked, I could make more money. I said, back in the day, I went from making nothing to making, no disrespect, but making more than my parents in short order.
Yep.
And my father had an advanced degree and been working as a teacher for years. Shows you how underappreciated that whole industry is. But that aside, and he was going, how the heck is this even possible? It was sales. It was just simply going out and doing the right things. And the more that I had the opportunity to observe people, not only doing the right things, but observing people not doing the right thing.
Right.
And then compare and contrast. And, the one thing I think that most salespeople don't do enough of is properly follow up.
Mm-hmm.
Not to jump too much into a lecture, but I see it all the time, and I shake my head, because the funny thing about sales is, my books aside, there's a plethora. There's a ton of books, articles, videos, webcasts out there. There's no secret to sales.
Right.
The only secret is, do you do the things that other people do to be successful, or do you not do them because you don't want to be bothered or you're lazy? It can't be because you don't know. It's all out there.
Right.
And so that's one of the things that I've struggled with in managing people is, it's not a secret. You just have to go and do it. And if you can't bring yourself to do it, you're going to be that 20% or whatever that doesn't make any money in sales. You should find something else.
Exactly. And that's the thing, but see, once you start seeing those paychecks, it becomes real good motivation. And I'm actually coming up on it now, and see, I've always, known I'm going to get there. It's just, and I was having this conversation with Anthony Parziali, my boss, yesterday. We're like, he is great. And we had some FaceTime yesterday. He was in the city office, and we're talking about getting there, and we're like, where is there? There is just constantly moving. He's like, I've been trying to get there for 20 years, and he does very well. And, but that's the thing though. It's, I'm starting to get to the point now where he mentioned, I blew past my number this year and, I'm going to see a really nice, bonus. And, I haven't even experienced that yet because I did when I was first in sales, but it was small. I was doing more residential and it wasn't anything significant, but, I was, I was always kind of getting there. And once I got there in my first sales job, I decided that I needed to try other things. And I just got back into sales 2 years ago. So, I finally, hit that mark, and it's really great, motivation. When you start seeing that money come through, you start to realize your potential and worth. And as far as the follow-up goes, it's fascinating how many people don't do it. See, I always thought that was just a given. You follow up after, like, if you don't hear from them in a week, you follow up, because I read somewhere a while back, if you're prospecting new business and you're trying to get a meeting with somebody, it takes about 15 follow-ups for them to acknowledge you on average, and get that meeting. And, you can go about it different ways. Emails become very redundant and annoying in some sense, but like, shoot them a call. If you got their number, hit them up on LinkedIn, or mix it up. What I see a lot of times with these emails is they're like templates, and like, you can tell they're just sending this template to several different, or probably hundreds of different people. When I try to do that, I send an article or I attach a podcast, and I'll say, hey, like, saw you're in this industry, saw this going on. I sign up for newsletters with companies, and like, if I see something cool, I'll reach out to the person in procurement or wherever, be like, hey, saw this going on, like, great, and that's, I find, how you spark those conversations. And I'd like to get your thoughts on relationship and sales, and, what you've seen work really well in that regard. Throughout your years, how has relationship building, and what are some of the things that you've learned in relationship building that have really helped you, grow and nurture these accounts, plant the seeds that grow into large oaks, if you will?
I think it's a great question. I think one of the things you hit upon is that nobody wants to be treated like they're just anybody.
Right.
Everybody wants to be treated like they're special. And I think that we do a disservice when we do, email blasts and stuff like that. I know that it happens. I know that there's some level of effectiveness, but to your point, I think what really pays long-term dividends is building mutually beneficial relationships. When I was first in sales, when I was about 24, 25, I got a phone call from one of my clients who was asking me about computer monitors. Now, I was working for a company that sold computer-related equipment, but we didn't sell computers or monitors. They were part of our system, but they weren't the key part. And so anyway, I was talking to him. I offered what guidance I could, and I hung up, and my manager walked by, and I told him, and I said, it was just odd. And he said, well, you don't realize that he just paid you this huge compliment. I said, well, what do you mean? I said, he needed to buy something. And of all the people he could have called for guidance, he called you. He said, today, he didn't use the language back then. Today, they call that a trusted advisor, right? So you move up to this role where you're going to give advice, and your advice is sought after by clients. They trust you.
Right.
And I started to realize that when you can give advice to people on things that maybe you don't even sell, you can help solve other problems when they're coming to you with other needs, it means that they trust you. And that's when you're going to get people to go above and beyond to want to work with you. And I began to see that in different relationships. God, I had one gentleman, he was one of my best clients in New Jersey. And, people in New York and New Jersey have a little bit of an attitude.
Yeah.
You love it or not, whatever.
Right.
And so I was telling him how he was calling on this other company, and the guy, this other owner wouldn't see me. And he knew the guy. So right there in his office, he picks up the phone and he calls him. He goes, if you don't talk to this kid, you're an idiot. He said, I'm going to have him call you later. You take his call and you set up a meeting with him. And I ended up getting a meeting with him. I ended up selling him some equipment. And before I left to go to a promotion I got to be a manager, he was right on the cusp of buying another $120-something thousand machine.
Wow.
I mean, the paycheck to me on that, this is 25, 30 years ago, was like 10 grand. I mean, it was a
Wow.
lot of money.
Yeah.
And so I went to see him and I said, listen, I said, I want to let you know I got this promotion. I'm going to be transferring out in like a month. And I think that, I know that you're considering, buying this other system. I think you ought to wait till they appoint a new sales rep so you can build a relationship with that person. And he looked at me and he said, no, I'm going to buy the machine from you and I'm going to buy it today. And I said, well, I don't have I don't have it all together. And we always met across the street from his office at this little bakery. And he said to me, he said, that's fine. He said, you sit here and write out all the contracts. When you're done, you come back, you knock on my door, I'll sign it and we'll be done.
Wow.
And it really taught me that, I had to kind of kick down that door using another client to get in front of him, but that our respect had grown to such a point that, he saw that not only benefiting his business, these devices are going to help him make money, but he wanted to make sure that I got credit, for my work. And, I really respected when people did that. Because when you're in sales, people say, oh, you do things just because you want a commission. That's not always true, but I can understand why that sometimes gets pinned on us, but it's great when you have clients who go out of their way to say, I recognize that you go above and beyond. Yes, I understand this is your livelihood, but you do go above and beyond. And where I can, I'm going to pay it back or pay it forward because, I like what you've done beyond the commission that you've earned. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
it does.
Logic to that?
No, absolutely. And because, like you said, a trusted advisor and any relationship you enter into, whether it's a work relationship, personal relationship, business relationship, whatever it may be, there is a level of, trust and reliability. It's what makes good friends and, good relationships, right? And there is a level of vulnerability when you ask for something, whether you're on the sales side or on the client side, asking for a favor or you're coming to that trusted advisor. So when either party can, reconcile and, come through for the other side, it's notable. And that's what creates those bonds and, makes them more powerful. It just happened to me with one of my clients. He's based in Austin, Texas, but his brother and his wife are moving to Queens, and they're like, hey, I know you're in the moving industry, but do you have any, residential brokers you could introduce my cousin to or my brother to? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And he just texted me this morning, and where is it here? Let me see. And he said, sounds like the broker's really taking care of my brother. Cannot thank you enough for the rec and the help. So, it's those sort of things like, you come through and just making that introduction or doing what you can for people.
It's the little things and you don't quite realize, to your point, how important sometimes these little things are to people, like making that strategic introduction or making sure that they're that they're taking care of it at a different level. I'll give you an interesting side note. When I was at JK Moving, we had the opportunity to be involved with one of these charity groups that was doing like a chili cook-off. It was one of the brokerage firms, and they were going to have this event. And, in addition to cooking chili, there were other booths to do different things. And I thought about it and I said, I think that what we ought to do is focus on people's kids. So we got an artist to paint faces and another one to like draw pictures of the kids. And then we got coloring books and all this stuff. So we set up the JK Kids Corner. Well, the next year, it went so well that the next year they gave us this huge tent area to run this thing. Everybody who came through loved it because we had snacks for the kids and everybody was there for the kids. People love when you do stuff for them, but they go bonkers when you take care of their kids.
Right.
And it's funny, none of that stuff had any great value to it, right?
Right.
But the simple fact they came through and we had set up all this stuff and people were, giving the parents a break to have a cold beer and a bowl of chili while we were, coloring and, keeping an eye on their family. It was great. We got a lot of kudos for that. We made a lot of new relationships that we never would have gotten banging on doors even or cold calling.
Exactly. Exactly. And like you said, they remember how you make them feel. And,
100%.
and that's what it comes down to. And we were talking about it before, and I want to mention it since, we're talking about kids and stuff like that. You're writing a new book about your time in youth sports and, coaching. And I've said this several times before, youth sports and going up through travel and all of those things. It's the reason why I succeed in business and sales is because of the skills that I learned in youth sports at a young age and then throughout, high school and college. Obviously teamwork, but conflict resolution, learning how to win and lose, training, discipline, those sort of things, people skills in managing and working with different people with, different personality types and things like that. All I owe largely to sports. So, tell us more about that book you're writing and what was your motive behind it?
Well, it's interesting, I always liked writing, but this whole book writing thing is really like a bad rash or something. I got it. Now I can't put any cream on it. It doesn't go away. So
You better get that checked
I
out.
wanted to switch gears. I have a book coming out with my very good friend, Bob Green, in a month or so about networking for attorneys. It says, I'm not in sales, I'm an attorney, I'm a lawyer. And it's all about helping attorneys network and grow their practice. And while we were working on that, I was just doodling some stories in my mind about coaching. And the next thing you know, I had made a list of some 50 different stories about interactions with kids and what that meant. Because I coached originally when my son was playing Little League, up until he got to about middle school and he had a year of football and I coached. And then he went off to high school and my good friend and I, who had always coached together, we kept going. Like our kids had now gone beyond us, but we kept at it a few more years. And I actually in some ways had even more fun because I didn't have to worry about anybody saying, oh, your kid's, batting third because it's your kid
Right.
or any of that.
Right.
I used
No
to joke and
favorites.
tell the kids, I dislike you all equally. And I would, I really always felt that way about them. But the name of the book, hopefully nobody will take it. I think we're still making sure we can copyright it is, Hey Coach, I Gotta Pee. And other little stories like that throughout. And when it comes out, I'll send you a copy. I'm about halfway through.
Nice. Yeah, please do because we were talking about this before. I am undergoing my first endeavor as a youth sport coach, and it's great. One of the things that I've always, made a mantra of mine or a real focus is, if you got a problem with things, the future, the kids of the future who are going to be adults is how you change it, and I think men specifically, there's a lack of leadership, lack of male leaders in the world in general. And, I aim to be a leader to these young men and, not so much in like I'm not like, I don't think of myself like as anything, prominent or anything like that, but just how to do things the right way. And it's interesting because they're 10 and, they have the attention spans of like a Cocker Spaniel. And, it's tough, but it's a lot of fun. And we've gotten to a stage now where they listen, and you can see the growth. And when you're that young, the growth can be pretty significant in a short time. And, that you can tell they want to get better and they want to learn the game and we're winning, which is great. And, everybody's understanding, scoring the basketball is only one part of the game, but, there's defense and passing and all of those things that go into it. And it's a lot of fun. And it's my main priority, and I was telling you this before, is just to make sure they come back next year. When mom and dad say, do you want to play basketball again? Coach Jack will be there and it's an easy yes. And, and that's what I like. And, you said you measured in hugs. I definitely measure it in smiles. I make sure the kids are having fun. And again, they're goofy and they're 10 and, they they get out of line sometimes, but that's okay. Like, just have fun.
That's part of it. It was funny, and I told you that about the hugs. It was the hugs from the moms and sometimes the dads when they saw what an impression you made, on their kids. And again, I coach kids as young as 8 or 9, starting off. And in the end, they were all like middle school age, like 12, 13, maybe 14. And one of the things when we coached football, a lot of the kids we coached, they were, 8th grade, and the next year they graduated, they went to high school.
Right.
But one of the things parents noticed was that after freshman football was done, 5, 6, 7 kids who played for us the year before, they'd come down to the practice field where we were. That was, a mile or so from the high school. And they'd help out.
Yeah.
And they'd come back and you'd say, some of the parents were like, you get these kids, now 14 or 15, they're coming back to hang out with the coaches who coached them last year and help out. They'd help run the drills because they knew all the drills. They'd, be on offense when we were on defense or vice versa. They'd help out, work with some of the kids on some of the skills, how to catch or how to pitch the ball. And it really came to light that we were making an impression on them.
Yep.
And we were helping. Because I think we all, even the best parents, everybody wants to think they're a good parent. I think we all need a little help. And I think kids listen to other people, which is both the good and bad, right? You want to make sure they're around the right people because they are impressionable. They do listen to other people, but you want to make sure they're spending time with some other people who care, that they're not just, playing basketball or football, but knowing that what you're doing is helping them become good adults.
Exactly.
And, having a safe environment to fail and to scrape their knees, but never really to get hurt.
Right.
Be able to learn to get back up again. And I think a lot of us who are well adjusted, for lack of a better word, were able to have experiences like that, whether it was sports or with scouting or, I don't know, chess club or whatever it was.
A number of things.
You got some support from other people outside of your parents that gave you some opportunities to see what you could become, versus what you were.
Exactly.
That's the difference, is you want to treat people the way that they could become the better version of themselves and help them on that course, because that's really making a contribution to, as you said, society overall, right? Not just the individual, but the whole society.
Exactly. And it kind of stems back to some of the stuff we were talking about before, as far as like taking a sales class in high school and enabling that confidence in individuals. And that's what I'm trying to do with these kids. I mean, I think some of them are in the position where mom and dad sign them up, just for something to do. And it's like, they're kind of halfway in. But I really aim to let them know, like, hey, you're a good player. Like, you got it. Like, you can be as good as you want to be. You just got to practice and stick with it, and I aim to make sure they don't get discouraged and, mistakes. It doesn't matter. We move on from them. One of the things, so I got a kid, he's always saying, I get fouled. I say, listen, buddy, the ref doesn't call it. The game moves on. And I was at practice with him. I was like, I'm going to, and I'm not the type to give homework or anything like that, but I was like, I want you to do me a favor. I said, when you get to the game on Saturday, before then, I want you to look up the word stoic, and I want you to tell me what that word means. And then, I want you to come here and just remember, you got to remain stoic. And, life and the game is going to throw different challenges at you. You got to get through, and, you got to focus on your team and, making yourself and your teammates better. And, hopefully we get the win in the process.
You buy him a copy of the Meditations?
I've actually got to read that book. That's on my list this year.
It's great.
I know. Yeah, I know.
It's
I know. I got to read that. I try to go, I do fiction, nonfiction, nonfiction, and I alternate. And I'm just finishing up Atomic Habits. I've been on it for a while.
Oh, it's great.
It is very good, and very helpful.
It's funny what you said, because, parents sometimes are misguided. I had one parent come and they had signed their child up for football, and I was talking to them. They go, yeah, we're expecting you to toughen them up. I go, well, that's not what we do.
Right.
It reminded me of what my mother once said. She goes, it's amazing. You got to get a license to have a dog, but anybody can have children. She said, we've got our emphasis in the wrong direction. You don't sign kids up for sports like football to toughen them up.
Right.
But I think that for the most part, what parents are looking for with kids anyway is another influence. Because it was really funny. My best friend and I coached our kids for years. And it was funny because if I went and told my son anything during a baseball game, you would have thought I was asking for the wrath of, heaven and hell. But if he heard it from my friend, it was sound advice.
Right.
And vice versa. So sometimes we grab each other and he'd say, hey, go tell my son, blah, blah, blah. And so I'd go over to his son and I'd whisper, in his ear, a little advice. And he'd go, okay, coach. And he'd do it. But if his father had said it to him, he'd have lost his mind.
Right, because he hears his father every day. That's and that's the thing, and that's why it's good to have that. So yeah, that's really great. I look forward to seeing that book, and I got a couple more questions for you. The first being with your time at JK. I had Jim Stevens on, and he credited you for being a real big inspiration over there, and doing a lot to build out that sales organization and growing it. What was it like over there, and I know Brian and Brad and those guys, when you're building a team like that, how is it you go about it? Because it's similar to sports in some sense, and managing different personalities and learning how to motivate each one individually. What was that like with the different people there? Because they're all very high quality people, and I'd like to hear more about that.
Sure. I was fortunate that the people like Jim and Brian and Brad and Rocco and a lot of other people, they were high quality people long before I got there. I think the thing that you look to do, and it's the responsibility of the leader, sales manager, sales VP, whatever, is to define the culture. And really, people talk about culture and all this, and it's important, but it really boils down to what you will focus on as being good and reward, and what you will admonish and try to get rid of. That's what it is. It's around behaviors. What do you honor as good behavior and supports a culture, and what things will you not accept? Because it's not what you say, it's what you tolerate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not my quote. It was another gentleman said that, but I believe that's true. It's not what you say, it's what you tolerate. And that's what people will kind of float to as the culture. And I was very lucky in wanting to create a culture where we competed not so much with each other, but with our competition. But behind the scenes, we would do what we could to help each other, not only professionally, but if needed, personally. We would be there for each other. And we got tremendous buy-in from people around that. I think it was something that, there was a lot of good things already going on, but I think it was something that they appreciated coming from me. I mean, I used to tell people sometimes to go home and have dinner with their family. They were there too much. I had another rule that I never wanted anybody to miss their kid's first day of school or a school play. I said, listen, even if there's something going on, I'll cover it for you. I said, but make sure you balance out, time with your family. And I've had people tell me that they appreciated that, because right now there's so many people saying, don't worry about it. You have to work. Your family will be there. It's like, no.
Yeah.
Your family, and not just people with kids, but especially when you have kids, they're little, and the next thing you know, they're on their own.
Right.
Somebody who's got a 26-year-old, it went quick, but I'm glad I made some of the choices I did to maybe not pursue some, other avenues for my own career, so that I could be there to coach his little league games and, see him play and hang out with his, with his friends. I mean, I don't regret any of that. And I know there's a lot of people who are successful. They've made a lot of money. To me, money is great because it gives you options.
Mm-hmm.
But in and of itself, I don't remember the last time I went to a funeral and they announced how much somebody had in their checking account. What I do remember is people getting up and saying, whether that person had any money, but had made time for other people. I hear a lot of people reflect on that.
Yeah.
And so I tell people, you want to live, unfortunately, a little bit like you're writing your own
Obituary.
eulogy.
Yeah. Oh, eulogy.
You know,
Yeah.
what are people going to say about you when you're gone?
Right.
If they're going to say you sold a lot of move jobs and made a lot of money, I guess that's okay if that's what you're aiming for. But if you're aiming to say, hey, this was somebody who dedicated their time to work with kids and run a basketball program for years and make sure the kids had a safe place to go, if that's more important than money helps you get there, so be it.
Right. No, that's very well said and very true too, because especially a guy like Jim, comes to mind. He is he's a Bronco. He goes, and he's tough to wrangle in sometimes, and he's mentioned it. And I think you helped him out a lot with that, kind of slowing him down so he could reach new heights. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes that's what it takes a little bit, is to take a step back and just take a breath and allow yourself to get out of your own way a little bit, and I think that's really important, because so many people think, you have to put in, and you do, you have to work hard, you have to put in the hours, and do things, but there's a balance to it, and there's the way to go about it, where you don't need to sacrifice your health, physically and mentally, just to hit a number. You'll get there if you treat people right and, do the right things, in terms of sales and business. And, you'll make it to where you're going, but it doesn't necessarily take, 60, 70 hours a week or something like that.
Well,
all the time.
there's a great little line about if you're not sure how you're chasing your own dreams, you might just be working to fulfill someone else's.
Right. Right.
So be careful, kind of what you wish for. And hey, if you got to work 60 or 70 hours to just fulfill your dreams, and I guess that's okay. But to your other point, think about what really is most important. And one of the things I love right now about not working for anybody, working for myself, aside from the fact that my boss can be a real jackass, is that I get the opportunity to decide what I want to work on,
Right.
what I want to do, and it mentally, it's put me in a place I've really never been before, and I half recommend it to everybody to some degree. Not necessarily right now, but somewhere in your career to have that opportunity to do your own gig and make your own rules.
Right.
There's something to be said. It's a little leery at first, but there's a lot of benefits to that. It puts a lot of things into perspective about really what's important.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. No, that's great. And, Vince, this has been great. I've really enjoyed talking to you. This has lived up to the hype. A lot of good advice, a lot of good stories. You're an impressive guy. I'm really appreciative to know you. And we got to do this again soon. We could have kept going, but, we'll definitely pick this up another time and hopefully in person if you're ever up in the city.
I do have family up in New York, so I will call you, Jack, and let you know. It's funny because the further south I move, the more people point out, my sarcasm.
Right.
You need to minimize that. And I go, yeah, but then I would never be able to go home. I said,
right, exactly.
Go to family dinner and the sharks would just, tear me apart.
Exactly. So, you got to stay sharp.
But thank you again. I really appreciate it. It was great. And I'd love to come back. I enjoyed talking with you. And thank you so much. Glad for our new friendship, our new relationship.
Me too, Vince. Thanks a lot. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Looking forward to the next time.